Today I want to go over an article that is, this is off of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. All right? That's about as authentic as it gets, wouldn't you say? All right. Let's start reading. The German Churches and the Nazi State. That's the title. Background. The population of Germany in 1933 was around 60 million. Almost all Germans were Christian. Now, this is a fact that many Christians in the United States have hid their eyes from. But it's a fact nevertheless. Belonging to either the Roman Catholic Church, 20 million members, or the Protestant Church, 40 million members. So, yes, we know that Hitler was a Catholic, but we are talking 2/3 of the Germans in the days of Nazi Germany were Protestants. The Jewish community in Germany in 1933 was less than 1% of the total population of the country. How did Christians and their churches in Germany respond to the Nazi regime and its laws, particularly to the persecution of the Jews? The racialized anti-Jewish Nazi ideology converged with anti-Semitism that was historically widespread throughout Europe at the time and had deep roots in Christian history. And you demand that the Jews convert to Christianity, you Christians? You demand that I should call myself a Christian? For all too many Christians, traditional interpretations of religious scriptures seem to support these prejudices. That's to Christians. But as I have proven to you over the past 5 years on this YouTube channel, the scripture does not support those prejudices at all. In fact, it is the opposite. The attitudes and actions of the German Catholics and Protestants during the Nazi era were shaped not only by their religious beliefs, but by other factors as well, including backlash against the Weimar Republic and the political, economic, social changes in Germany that occurred during the 1920s. Excuses, excuses, excuses. Anti-communism, nationalism, resentment toward the international community in the wake of World War I, which Germany lost, for which it was forced to pay heavy reparations. Excuses, excuses. We demand the freedom of all religious confessions in the state insofar as they do not jeopardize the state's existence or conflict with the manners and moral sentiments of the Germanic race. The party, as such, upholds the point of view of a positive Christianity without tying itself confessionally to any one confession. It combats the Jewish materialistic spirit at home and abroad and is convinced that a permanent recovery of our people can only be achieved from within on the basis of the common good before the individual good. Oh, how many times have we heard that term, the common good? And I suppose the term "the road to hell is paved with good intentions" probably came or rooted in the common good theory. Despite the open anti-Semitism of this statement and its linkage between confessional freedom and a nationalistic, radicalized, or racialized understanding of morality, many Christians in Germany at the time read this as an affirmation of Christian values. Of course they did. So you say the Nazis weren't Christians. Oh, yes, they were. Oh, yes, they were. Because you see, folks, if you would bother to read Christian history is full of episodes like what happened in Nazi Germany. Protestant churches in Nazi Germany. The largest Protestant church in Germany in the 1930s was the German Evangelical Church, comprised of 28 regional churches or Landeskirchen that included of the three major theological traditions that had emerged from the Reformation. Number 1, Lutheran. Number 2, Reformed. And number 3, United. Most of Germany's 40 million Protestants were members of this church, although there were smaller so-called free Protestant churches. They're all Protestants. I've told you Baptists that you're Protestants. And all Protestants are rooted in Catholicism. I've told you that. And I know you do not agree with me on, but that's okay. You're deluded anyway. You also believe that bunnies lay pretty little eggs. You also believe that Santa Claus comes down a chimney that is too small for him to come down. You also believe that he has the reindeer pulling his sleigh in the air. You also believe that your Messiah was born on December the 25th, like all the other Roman idols were. Oh, you don't believe that? I'll show it to you. The Roman Empire declared December 25th a holiday to celebrate the birth of their adopted Syrian god Sol Invictus. That's the sun god Baal. You know, the one that got Israel, the 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes, chased out of the Holy Land because they worshipped that false idol. Yeah, the one you worship today, you Christians. Historically, the German Evangelical Church viewed itself as one of the pillars of German culture and society, with a theological grounded tradition of loyalty to the state. During the 1920s, a movement emerged within the German Evangelical Church called Deutsche Christen, or German Christians. The German Christians embraced many of the nationalistic and racial aspects of Nazi ideology. Once the Nazis came to power, this group sought the creation of a national Reich Church and supported a Nazified version of Christianity. They weren't the only ones. They weren't the only ones. The Mennonite Church in Germany did too. I'm not afraid to say it. Just because Anabaptists in the 20th century chose the persecutors of their forefathers. Yes, they chose the Anabaptists in Germany of the 20th century chose the persecutors of their forefathers. If their forefathers were raised from the dead today, they would condemn their own great, 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 great grandchildren. The Bekennete Kirche, the confessed church, emerged in opposition of the German Christians. Its founded document, the Barmen Confession of Faith, declared that the church's allegiance was to God, not to Jehovah, by the way, but to God, and Scripture, not a worldly furor. Both the confessing church and the German Christians remained part of the German evangelical church, and was the result of a Kirchenkampf, or church struggle, within the German Protestantism, an ongoing debate and struggle for control between those who sought a Nazified church and those who opposed it, and the so-called neutral church leaders whose priority was the avoidance of both of the church schism of any kind of conflict with the Nazi state. So they both wanted to make sure they avoided any kind of conflict with the Nazi state. All right, the most famous members of the confessing church were the theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, executed for his role in the conspiracy to overthrow the regime, and Pastor Martin Niemöller, who spent 7 years in concentration camps for his criticism of Hitler. Yet these clergymen were not typical of the confessing church. No. Despite their examples, the Protestant Kirchenkampf was mostly an internal church matter, not a fight against National Socialism. Even in the confessing church, most church leaders were primarily concerned with blocking state and ideological interference in church affairs, yet there was certain members of the clergy and laity who opposed and resisted the regime, not a whole lot of them, including some who aided and hid Jews. Not a whole lot of them, but I will tell you, listen to me carefully. Listen to me carefully. When you read Matthew 25, when the Gentiles are set in front of the king, and they are separated, the sheep and the goats, the sheep on the right hand and the goats on the left, the sheep are the ones who aided and hid the Jews, if you read it correctly, which your preachers have taught you to read it incorrectly. The Roman Catholic Church in Nazi Germany. The Catholic Church was not as sharply divided by different ideological factions as the Protestant Church was. It never underwent an internal Kirchenkampf between these different factions. Catholic leaders were initially more suspicious of National Socialism than their Protestant counterparts. Nationalism was not as deeply embedded in the German Catholic Church, and the rabid anti-Catholicism of figures such as Alfredo Rosenberg, a leading Nazi ideologue during the Nazi rise to power, raised early concerns among Catholic leaders in Germany and in the Vatican. In addition, the Catholic Center Party had been a key coalition government partner with the Weimar Republic during the 1920s, and was aligned with both the Social Democrats and the leftist German Democratic Party, pitting it politically against right-wing parties like the Nazis. No, the Nazi party was not right-wing, it was left-wing. Many people do not know this. Socialism is socialism. Communism is international socialism, and Nazism is merely national socialism. They are both leftist groups. I will continue. Before 1933, in fact, some bishops prohibited Catholics in their dioceses from joining the Nazi Party. This ban was dropped after Hitler's March 23, 1933 speech at the Reichstag, which he described Christianity as the foundation for German values, and you say that Hitler was not a Christian. He was. He most certainly was. The Center Party was dissolved as part of the signing of the 1933 Concordat between the Vatican and the Nazi governmental representatives, you see. Concordat? Did you know about the Concordat? Yes, the Catholic Church was committing fornication with the National Socialist Party of Nazi Germany. And indeed, the Protestant religion of Nazi Germany was the foundation of Nazi Germany. And several of its leaders were murdered in the Rome Purge in July 1934. In both German churches, there were members, including clergy and leading theologians, who openly supported the Nazi regime. With time, anti-Nazi sentiment grew in both Protestant and Catholic church circles as the Nazi regime exerted greater pressure on them. In turn, the Nazi regime saw a potential for dissent in church criticism of state measures when a protest statement was read from pulpits of the confessing churches, which was a small minority of the Protestants. In March 1935, for example, Nazi authorities reacted forcefully by briefly arresting over 700 pastors. After the 1937 papal encyclical with burning concern was read from Catholic pulpits, the Gestapo confiscated copies from the diocesan offices throughout the country. The general tactic by the leadership of both Protestant and Catholic churches in Germany was caution with respect to protest and compromise with the Nazi state leadership where possible. There was criticism within both churches of Nazi racialized ideology and notions of Aryanism, but that number was very few, as you just read. And movements emerged in both churches to defend church members who were considered non-Aryan under Nazi racial law, like Jews who had converted. Yet throughout this period, there was virtually no public opposition to anti-Semitism or to any readiness by church leaders to publicly oppose a regime on the issues of anti-Semitism and state-sanctioned violence against the Jews. Now, as I pointed out, or as I should say, Paul pointed out in one of my previous videos, how Paul told the Corinthians that he knew that if another Messiah brought another gospel, that the Corinthians would quickly follow after him. Well, what do you think happened here? Paul was right. There were individual Catholics and Protestants. Individuals. You mean not groups, just one person at a time, who spoke out on behalf of Jews, and small groups within both churches that became involved in rescue. Small groups. Oh yes, folks. It is true what is written in Matthew 25. We'll get there in a minute. Became involved in rescue and resistance activities, for example, the White Rose and Herman Moss. After 1945, the silence of the church leadership and the widespread complicity of ordinary Christians. All right? This is not me making the accusation here. This is the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum making the accusations against the European churches. Now, remember what I have told you, that all the churches are rooted in Catholicism. All of them. And I will also tell you that the Amish churches, the Mennonite churches, the Friends, the Brethren, they are also all rooted in Catholicism. So are you Baptists. The church leadership and the widespread complicity of ordinary Christians compelled leaders of both churches to address issues of guilt and complicity during the Holocaust, a process that continues internationally to this day. Now, I did say I was going to go to Matthew 25. Where is it? Matthew 25. Now, we just read there was not a whole lot of Christians that helped the Jews. Wasn't a whole lot of them. And I must say, folks, I know you Americans and you British would say, oh, we would not have participated. Oh, yes, you would have. You know how I know this? Because you see, when France was taken over, when the Nazis defeated France, the French were even more zealous to sending the Jews to the concentration camps than even the Nazis themselves were. The Poles who claimed they were victims of the Nazis, they were still shooting Jews out in the street after the war was over. The Ukrainians did the same thing. It comes from your religion. When this verse 31, and when the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all his holy messengers with him, then shall he sit upon his throne of glory, and before him shall be gathered all the Gentiles. Gentiles. So that excludes the Jews. The Jews are excluded from this. Why? Because the elect are all Israel. Paul said in Romans 11, verse 26, and I quote verbatim, and so all Israel shall be saved. If you bother to read verse 25, you will see that it says, for I would not, brethren, to the Romans, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, that partial blindness has happened to Israel until the time of the Gentiles comes to an end. Verse 26, and so all Israel shall be saved. For out of Zion shall come the deliverer, and shall turn away unholiness from, not the church, Jacob. For this is my covenant, the new covenant, with them, when I shall take away their sins. Verse 28, I believe it's verse 28, yes. Now I've got to go there because I can't remember. I was going to do it verbatim. But I'm getting old. This is very, very important. Concerning the gospel, they might be enemies for your sakes, Romans, but concerning the election, they are the beloved for the patriarch's sakes. Okay, so what that is saying here is they are the elect for the patriarch's sakes. Because the gifts and calling of Jehovah cannot be changed. So if you are one of those who say that the church is the elect and not Israel, you have just thrown yourself out of the kingdom. Okay? And this is why you would be one of those who would have sided with Hitler and would have ran the Jews into the ovens and the firing squads. You would have done it if in your heart you say that the Jews are no longer the elect, but the church is. Now, there is a people here, and we're going to go right back here to Matthew 25, that would disagree with you. They would disagree with you. And their actions show it. I remember the last video when I talked about Irene Gut Updike. She was one of them who disagreed with the notion that the Jews were not the elect, but that the church replaced the Jews as the elect. She didn't agree with that. And that's why she acted the way she did. That is why she sullied herself to save as many Jews as possible. Anyone who says in their heart that the church replaced the Jews as the elect, they would never do what Irene Gut Updike did. When the Son of Man shall come with all his holy messengers, and he shall sit on his throne of glory, and before him shall be gathered all the Gentiles, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep upon his right hand, and the goats on his left. And the king shall say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, Gentile. Yeah, that's right, Gentile. And you gave me meat. I was thirsty, Gentile. And you gave me drink. I was a stranger in your land, O Gentile. And you took me in. Who took him in? People like Irene Gut Updike took him in. Naked and you clothed me. When she took the Jews into the forest away from the murder camps and provided them with food and clothing, she did that to them, to the Jews. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison, yes, in the concentration camps, and you came unto me. Now, I do not know how Jehovah or Yehoshua is going to render judgment to the Russians and the Americans who broke open the concentration camps and let the Jews out. But those troops, they did this. They opened up the prisons when they came to the concentration camps. They broke them open and set the Jews free. That's also a part of the promise. Then shall the righteous answer and say, Master, when did we see you hungry and fed you, or thirsty and gave you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and took you in, or naked and clothed you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and came unto you? And the king shall say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it to one, just one, of the very least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. So who are those his brethren in contrast with the Gentiles? That would, by default, render his brethren the Jews. It's true, folks. And once again, I need to remind you, as I often have to do, it is a most disgusting thing, and I'm putting myself in mortal danger for doing this, but I have no choice. I have to remind you, Christians, what your religion is rooted in, to give you a chance to remove yourself from this blasphemy that is rooted in the Christian churches, both the Catholic and Protestantism. I have done this over and over again, and I ought to be getting pretty efficient at it by now. So when you read this part, the Jude and sow is a folk art image of Jews in obscene contact with a large sow, which Judaism is an unclean animal that appeared during the 13th century in Germany. Now, 13th century, there was no such thing as Protestants. Okay, they were all Catholics. So this started with the Catholics. Then it continued. The city of Wittenberg contained the Jude and sow from 1305 in the facade of the Staatskirche, the church where Martin Luther preached. It portrays a rabbi who looks under the sow's tail and the Jews drinking from its tits, an inscription reading Rabbini Shem Ha-Meforesh. This, folks, is utter blasphemy. And as I am telling you right now, I am putting myself in mortal danger by showing this to you over and over and over again. Okay? Gibberish, which presumably bastardizes the Shem Ha-Meforesh. What is the Shem Ha-Meforesh? It is the tetragrammaton. It is the real name of your Creator. This bastardizes His holy name. And when you read in Martin Luther's book, Von Shem Ha-Meforesh, in 1543, the father of all Protestantism, Luther comments on the Jude and sow sculpture at Wittenberg, echoing the anti-Semitism of the image and locating the Talmud in the sow's bowels. Here in our church in Wittenberg, a sow sculpted in stone, young pigs and Jews lie suckling under her feet. Behind the sow, a rabbi is bent over the sow, lifting up her right leg, holding her tail high and looking intensely under her tail into her Talmud, as though he was reading something acute or extraordinary, which is certainly, this is his words, which is certainly where they get their holy name of your Creator. This is exactly what he said word for word. And you Protestants, you are all followers of Martin Luther. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Where do you think Hitler got his propaganda from? He got it from you Christians. Because you refused to recognize Israel as the elect, even though Paul told you that Israel is the elect for the patriarch's sakes, but you refused to recognize that. And the only ones who recognized that were people like Irene Gut Updike. They didn't recognize it with their words. They recognized that truth with their actions. Which one should I do? This one, I think. All right. So Martin Luther writes a book on the Jews and their lies, von der Juden, and I'm sorry, I don't speak German very well. In modern spelling, on the Jews and their lies is a 65,000 slanderous statement against the Jews. A 65,000 word slanderous statement, a treatise written in 1543 by the German Reformation leader Martin Luther. All right, now, In the first 10 sections of the treatise, Luther expounds at considerable length upon his views concerning Jews and Judaism on how these compare to Protestants and Protestant Christianity. Following the exposition, Section 11 of the treatise advises Protestants to carry out 7 remedial actions, namely, number 1, to burn down Jewish synagogues and schools and to warn people against them, to refuse to let Jews own houses among Christians. Remember, the Jews are the elect for the patriarch's sake. Number 2 is a rejection of that truth. To take away Jewish religious writings, to forbid rabbis from preaching, to offer no protection to Jews on highways, for usury to be prohibited, and for all the Jews' silver and gold to be stolen, put aside for safekeeping, and given back to Jews who truly convert. And that truly convert means they'll never convert. See, that's a lie. That number 6 is a total, complete lie. And number 7, to give young, strong Jews flail, axe, spade, and spindle, and let them earn their bread in the sweat of their brow. All right. But what I wanted to do, but you can read the rest of this, okay? But Hitler did quote from Martin Luther. Is this the one? The Germany's from Luther to Hitler. Is this it? See, there's so much information out there, folks. It's hard to find it. Here's another one. We are at fault in not slaying the Jews. This is Martin Luther. So here's what I'm trying to tell you, Christians, is this. Now, the United States of America is a vast majority Protestant. That makes you followers of Martin Luther, this guy who said that you are at fault for not slaying the Jews. So are you going to quit going to church? No, you're not. You're not going to do it. You're going to keep going to church because you think it's the right thing to do. What's no different, if you go to church and we already know what Catholic Church is. It is the foundation of all of this. But see, what I'm trying to tell you evangelicals, you Methodists, you Baptists, you Amish, you Mennonite, all of you today who are Protestants, you are all Protestants, that you are by default followers of the man who said, and I quote, we are at fault in not slaying the Jews. You are by default followers of him. Oh, you may not agree with every little aspect of his ideology, but you agree with most. Let me ask you a question. Who is more evil? A 50% Nazi or 100% Nazi? Of course, that's a rhetorical question, isn't it? Well, that question applies to you, Christian. I'm going to type in Hitler quoted Luther. I think we found something here. Once again, this is out of Rollins University, I believe it is. Luther and Hitler, a linear connection between Martin Luther and Adolf Hitler's anti-Semitism with a nationalistic foundation. See, I'm telling you the truth, folks. You evangelicals, you Baptists, you Methodists, you, what do you call it, Pentecostals, all of you, you're followers of Martin Luther, and if you're followers of Martin Luther, you are indirect followers of Adolf Hitler. Two of the most notoriously unshakable anti-Semitics were the Protestant reformer Martin Luther and German Chancellor turned dictator Adolf Hitler. Remember, Martin Luther is equal in vile hatred to the Jews as Adolf Hitler. And I'm telling you right now that the majority of Christians in the United States of America and Great Britain are followers of Martin Luther. Let me ask you a question. Which one of these is more vile? You know that's a rhetorical question because vile is vile. Although 4 centuries apart, both Martin Luther and Adolf Hitler had a remarkable impact on both Germany and the world. Luther is renowned still today as the initiator and the leader of the Protestant Reformation. Centuries later, Lutherans and Germans alike admire and honor him for his bold, enduring actions against the Catholic Church in the 1500s. He is still honored and revered today. And he said that we, and I quote, are at fault for not slaying the Jews. He wrote a 65,000-word treatise slandering the Jews, upholding the standard of the Catholic Church in their slandering of the holy name of the Elohim of Israel with the Judenschau. Hitler remains one of the most hated men in history. Why not Martin Luther? Wasn't he just as evil? Didn't he lay the foundation for the Holocaust? Yes, he did. I'll show you. This is, of course, the Jerusalem Post. What better publication to find it than the Jerusalem Post? Foundations of the Holocaust, Martin Luther, theologian of hate. At his trial in Nuremberg, Julius Streicher argued that if he should be standing there arraigned on such charges, so should Martin Luther. Thank you very much, Julius Streicher, you murderer, for telling the truth. And yet, Protestants, either knowingly or unknowingly, follow Martin Luther. And Julius Streicher said, essentially, that Martin Luther is just as guilty as he was and just as guilty as Adolf Hitler. Thank you very much for telling the truth. I don't need to, but I don't even need to go through any of this. That right there was perfect. It was perfect. So what are you Christians going to do now? Huh? What are you going to do now? You still celebrate the same things that Martin Luther. Oh, look at this. Let me show you something. Now, we all know that this tradition started before Martin Luther, okay? Let's not be foolish. But there was a time when some of this was diminished, okay? As you see right here, the history of the Christmas trees goes back to symbolic use and evergreens in... Now, what is it? What are they trying to do to me? Trying to keep me from... Come on, now, what in the world? They won't even let me read it. Let's try again. Let's do this. ChristianIndex.org. Martin Luther's influence on Christmas traditions and atmospheric Christmas markets. Many Georgia Baptists had barely digested their Thanksgiving dinner before they were decorating their Christmas tree. Few may be aware of the connection between the festive tradition and the great reformer as Christians celebrate this year's 500th anniversary of the Reformation. You Baptists, you say you're not of Martin Luther. You lie. The Christmas tree, special carols, and presents on December the 24th, these much-loved traditions are all linked to Martin Luther. Thank you very much. I'm done with that. But you're not going to give all this up, are you? Because if you did, your children would reject you. Your wife will divorce you. Take more than half of what you own. Yeah. Your mother and father will call you crazy. Your friends will say you're nuts. But remember this right here. You're either going to be, if you're a Gentile, you're either going to be divided and placed among the sheep or with the goats. And people like Irene Good Updike and others were extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to save Jews' lives. And the reason is because that guarantees their salvation. Verse 41, and then he shall say to those on his left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels, for I was hungry, and you gave me no meat. Does it say they committed murder? Nope. I was hungry, and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison, and you visited me not. And then they shall answer him and say, Master, when did we see you hungry or thirst or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison, and did not minister unto you? He said, he will give them the answer like this, Verily I say unto you, because you did not do it to a single one of these, the least of these, that would be the Jews, when they were in their affliction, you did it not unto me, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. These are the righteous among the Gentiles, because it says right here, Gentiles. Gentiles, right here, as distinct from Israel. You see, I'm not going to let your preacher cloud your eyes with falsehoods and get away with it. I'm going to show you the truth. The truth is right here in the scripture, but you need to use Strong's Concordance to find it. Because in your King James Version, and your Martin Luther version, and the Latin version, and the Spanish version, and the French version, they're all filled with the twisting of the scripture, as Peter warned against in 2 Peter 3:16, I believe it is. So what are you going to do, O Gentile? Are you still going to stand with those who say that the church has replaced Israel as the elect? If you do, and you have no history of doing what Irene Gut Updike did, your judgment is ahead of you. I am strongly not suggesting to you, I strongly urge that you stop following the man at the Vatican and stop following Martin Luther. If you're a Christian, you are following one or the other. You can't get around it, folks. I've proven it to you. You're going to have to reject all of their traditions, all of their thoughts, all of their ways, and you're going to need to be, as they would put it, Jew-centric. What do I mean by that? You have to consider the Jews your brethren. What would you do if your own brother was locked up in prison? Would you go see him? What would you do if your own brother was on a sickbed? What would you do if your own brother was in trouble? Would you go and help him? Of course you would. If you do not feel the same way about the Jews, then you are one of those on his left hand. It's just that simple, folks. You must consider the Jews as your brother. Some of you say you do, but you still want to go and follow after Martin Luther. You can't do both. You can't do both. Nope. You can't be a follower of Hitler and a friend of Jews. You can't do it. Martin Luther and Hitler are two, I just proved it to you, they were of the same bolt of cloth. And yet, let's look and see how many, population of Protestants in the United States. I'm just going to the United States right now. $141 million people are followers of Martin Luther in some way or another. That is a shame. It is the largest denomination, or is the largest grouping of Christians in the United States, with combined denominations collectively comprising about 43% of the country's population. When it comes to Martin Luther and Hitler, there is no difference. And don't say you're not a follower of Martin Luther if you're a Protestant. I'm sorry, you can't do that. Because you are. I proved it.